With me is teacher Foca Yariv. He has been practicing yoga since the age of 17 and teaching for 15 years all aspects of Tantra and yoga, and he's been leading men's group. And today we're going to be speaking about erotic education. Welcome, Foca.
Hi, Eureka.
So can I be a bit cheeky and start off with your own experience of erotic education?
It's the experience of the lack of, which I didn't know even there was the lack of, because everybody didn't have it around me. I mean, all my class group, all my mates at the time, nobody had. So you don't even know you're fully missing it. I mean, it started with an awkward moment when I was 11, when my father asked me if I masturbate, and I said no, and his face was just like, I remember his face was just like, I don't know what to do now. And it was just the end of the conversation. We didn't speak about after my 20s, we continued the discussion. And then, no, you catch some scenes at night, whatever, on family movie nights, you see a bit of a breast. With your mates, you see something late night television. We got cable TV when I was 12, and then you have RTL and the German. You have a little bit of an erotic movie every Saturday. And the whole thing was a bit like a shot in the dark. I mean, you don't actually have education, you have so much curiosity on the matter. And I remember it kind of culminated in the incompetency of losing my virginity. I just didn't know how to do it. And I remember that afternoon in September 99, when I was 16, after losing my virginity, and I was like, something isn't right here. It just cannot be like this. All this fuss for this little, and I didn't feel there was no fulfillment at all, except the idea of, oh, I can tell my mates I did it. Inside I felt zero fulfillment. And then that brought to the idea, okay, I need to do something about it. I decided probably within a month after that to stop masturbating.
That's unusual.
Yeah, it was unusual at the time. I just realized it's so silly. I just felt like that the losing the virginity like that was just so unfulfilled, and I realized that there must be something else. I had no clue what it will be. And I remember we had in the high school auditorium, 320 horny teenagers, a cucumber and a condom. The amount of confusion that left that room was just incomprehensible. It was like, why would we do it even?
That was your sex education class?
That was the sex education, the official one. So, yeah, it left a big hole, and it left a lot of curiosity and many questions unanswered.
So there's a lot of secrecy around lovemaking.
Yeah, it's a secrecy, and it's like it's a forbidden part of life. I mean, the whole idea of the forbidden fruit and the sin, and yeah, I mean, Jewish country, so it's very present there. So.
But did you have an intuition inside you that there was something more?
Yeah, after I lost my virginity, I did. I remember the age of 16 to 17 and a half when I met my brother, who came back from India and started to teach me yoga and tantra. Until then, there was a lot of curiosity and the realization that there is more. It was a form of the idealization of the feminine. I was writing a lot, and a little poet at that time.
You were a poet?
Yeah, I love writing. I still write. I mean, this idealization of the feminine. Back then, it was the idealization with the idea that I'm still incompetent to fully touch that, because I realized there is a magnitude of a spirit there that I cannot fully touch because I didn't know how. So I would say that first, until I met yoga and tantra, the education, or how I felt about education was the realization of the lack of it. That was very clear in my life.
So just talking about now, bring us up to the present day, why is there an urgency for all men, but maybe particularly young men and women, to have an erotic education?
Well, the lack of education, or we can put it like this, the lack of awareness on this aspect creates confusion. And out of confusion, sufferance is born. And the sufferance here is the lack of fulfillment, mental health, the lack of human connection. All this that we see a surge in is directly proportional to the lack of genuine erotic education. So you can put them on a scale. So the less education you'll have, the rise you'll have in performance anxiety between men. I mean, men now have erectile problems in their 20s. which is unheard of. I mean, usually in your 20s, you should have the other problem. You cannot get it down, not can get it up. And this kind of dissonance that appears is mainly due to the fact that there is no education. And there's no surprise when there's no education, the consequence is ignorance. It's not the people's fault. I mean, when you don't have firmware, then you become ignorant, and then you learn, and then you become better in it. So I would say that there is a massive need for it. And you see as well all these men who are now trying to find anything that will give them any idea of, this is how I should do it, and all these dating apps and all that. Just become so tensed about it.
So what information is filling the gap?
I mean, there are two sets of treatises. There are the Tantras and there are the Kama Shastras. The Kama Shastras, like the Kama Sutra, Koka Shastra, Anangaranga, the Scented Garden later on, and so forth, were particular texts that were aiming to support people in fulfillment in life. And then you will have the Tantras that were looking at the highest forms of spiritual realization, in which they incorporate in those teachings the erotic act. Those two, personally, I study them and I practice them, are complementary, and in the way that they bring forth a certain form of education that makes it so that the individual can assimilate, learn, and practice to become more fulfilled. Fulfillment will never come from an exterior factor. Fulfillment is a realization or a consequence of one's own inner assimilation and learning, and then you become fulfilled in the lovemaking because you learn how to do it. If you have never learned, how will you be fully fulfilled? There will always be a tint of, it's not enough.
And how does that relate to self-development?
Well, I would dare say like this. Eroticism is an integral part of our life. We cannot fully self-develop without having that part of our life touched by our conscious development. If we haven't touched that, our development as a human being is hindered.
So in a way, we don't know who we are.
You don't know fully who you are because you neglected that, because we are erotic human beings. Everybody. From the monk to the Tantra practitioner, we all have a libido, this energy of life within us.
Successful erotic education, what does that bring?
It brings a sense of happiness and fulfillment. It will bring an introspection and an impetus in growth. It will bring forth a sense of connection, the human connection, and a freedom, if I have just to categorize them. I mean, each one of them can be, of course, expanded. But these notions are fundamental. I mean, what we see nowadays, we see exactly the lack of all those aspects, happiness, freedom, fulfillment, and so forth. And it is rooted in knowing ourselves erotically.
Can you expand on that?
Which part?
Well, I suppose energetically, first of all. Once your erotic energy, which we traditionally might have known as sexual energy, is being directed in an erotic way, how does that change who we are mentally, physically, spiritually? Are we more able to connect with our energies that might be frustrated or repressed?
Completely.
Yeah.
Well, you half answered everything that you asked. It's great. So, you see, the moment when we begin the process of education and we start even the learning process, even if we don't succeed, this represents a beneficial challenge for our growth, which is extremely meaningful. For example, you aim to improve yourself in all areas of life, and then you look erotically and say, how can I improve myself in the bedroom? Well, you need to become more loving, more empathic. You need to mobilize yourself, otherwise to maybe sometimes take aphrodisiacs, take care of your physical body, yoga and so forth. All of them will support you in that. So we cannot separate the erotic education from the general education of self-growth, development, and reaching the supreme fulfillment of one's own self. But this is an integral part of the whole scheme. This is why only saying, I only want to do erotic education without anything else, it's an impossibility. And hence, the erotic education, when done correctly, for example, if you ask energetically, when one learns the separation of orgasm and ejaculation, one will have multiple orgasms, both men and women, which will then support the, you can say, the fruition or the blossoming of their energetic body, which manifests in a certain form. Even of, you feel like you're shining. You know, it's sometimes they have, who was lucky in the weekend, they look a bit shining. Well, you times it by 100. There's a certain kind of shining. There's a certain kind
love
of,
makes you shine.
yeah, a certain kind of fulfillment, a certain kind of a sense of being or rested in one's own self. It's an extraordinary skill nowadays. People are so dependent on likes and so forth. They cannot really rest in one's own self. Just benefit from what they feel inside. Those are extraordinary aspects of life that, I mean, they seem, banal, being fulfilled and happy. It's not banal at all. It's an integral part of the meaning of our existence.
And that way can have access to more of our potential.
Completely. I would dare say like this, there's so many gifts buried inside, and with this luminosity of love and eroticism put together and practice, those gifts can gradually come to fruition. And when they come to fruition, it's not, I mean, there's something when you get a gift from the outside. There's something else when the gift that you have within this potential is being brought and then it's being shared with the world. This form, like, is a different category of gifts. This is what genuinely creates a sense of fulfillment. Any exterior gift fulfills us for a certain amount of time, and then, we have the graph, lack and then fulfillment. But that fulfillment that comes within from a gift that we develop and we start to give to the world, that creates a continuity in fulfillment. It doesn't oscillate.
And how old were you when you first experienced that?
June 2004 was the first time I had an orgasm without an ejaculation, which we had together. And that moment left such an imprint on me. I was just 20. And I remember that moment, it was this Eureka Moment. And that led me to because it takes a great amount of effort, education. It's not it's not an easy education, but it led to such an impetus of practicing yoga, of continuing, of, even when relationships are difficult, to say, I'm sticking to it. I'm not just, whenever there's a difficulty, I'm changing a girl. It really reconfigured me. It was just one experience. Afterward, followed a few experiences, and it wasn't like that. But I had already within me the realization that that's possible.
You thought, this is it. This is my way. This is a signpost telling me to go in this direction.
Yeah, I must say, I had a religious sentiment from a very young age, which was unusual because my family were agnostic. It wasn't like something home. But I had a religious sense. And it was in that moment that I felt that somehow religion and Eros binded. The feeling or the sentiment of being close to a higher reality, feeling the presence of God, and pleasure, love, fulfillment were all merged in one. And all this idea that those two forces are antagonistic and they don't match kind of broke in that moment, which led to, of course, the continuation of the endeavors to.
And were you able to move your ego out and your soul in as being the...
Well, it's not like I wish it would be just a box that you move in and out. It was a moment, look, living in a dark room and having a blitz, a light, for a moment, when you start to look around and you're like, there's so much to discover here, the inner world. And then the light went off again. Darkness prevailed in the end. But I knew that there is that light. And I would say that that was a milestone in the impetus of my evolution as a man. So,
how much did your attitude towards women, your romantic, respectful attitude towards women help?
Well, in the idealization of the feminine was this, there is a form of candor and cherish and love. And I once had the realization that the most delicate gift that God ever entrusted me is a woman's heart. And this both in relationship and in dealing with people, with women, to cherish them for that. So I do believe that, for me, this approach towards the feminine helped me to put great efforts in becoming the best possible man, and still is a great impetus and an inspiration. Because I realized that in order to fully love a woman, I need to be the best possible man. That was the most agonizing part in learning amorous continence, that I felt like she could do so much better. I didn't match her, and I was like, okay, I need to jump back on the horse, try harder, because I need to match her, because my idea of fully making her happy and supporting for happiness, offering her as much pleasure as possible, being the man that she so much longs for, that's such a good inspiration for me for growth. So it helped me a lot, I would say, and it still does.
And does it work the same way for women?
Yeah. See, there's a polarity here, otherwise there's a particular nuance in which it will manifest. But yeah, it will work. We are here, I would dare say we need one another. I know nowadays everybody says, we are completely independent. We are not. One of the beautiful parts in life is that we need one another. We generally need one another. Not all the time, you don't need to text every day, but we need one another in this game. The dance isn't as beautiful when it's just men or just women, the tango. We need one another in this dance, in the lovemaking relationship. And we constantly need one another as well to be inspired. I noticed with women, when they are in love, they immediately blooms. They have this wish to give from themselves, this dynamism, this effervescence of their heart. It's fantastic. And when a man is in love, he has this wish to, become better, to manifest, he reveals his romantic side. All these notions of his emotions can come much more clear to the surface. So there is a gamut of elements in which you support one another and inspire one another. Very often, they put it a bit more concisely that a man adores a woman and that way he grows, and a woman admires a man and in that way she grows. Often admiration is born from that which the other have acquired. So, for example, a man has acquired a certain form of stability at the level of the consciousness, is a certain form of inner dynamism and so forth. A woman will admire that, and a man will adore the goddess that exists there within a woman. It's a bit more complex than that, but if I want to put it in one sentence, that often will be the adoration versus admiration.
And in terms of teaching erotic continence, is that one of the first things a man will learn?
I would definitely say yes. Well, this is this idea of amorous erotic continence is never devoid of the idea of understanding the fact that a woman is different, and we are different and complementary, and there's fundamental aspects about love, about empathy. And then when we start to engage in the art of the lovemaking, the erotic aspects and so forth, they come in a context. So it's not just I contract this muscle, do this, do it like that. That's meaningless. Without the context, it doesn't make a huge difference. So you last 10 minutes instead of 5. Not a big deal.
But at a certain point, you will be teaching with a graph and...
with men, PowerPoints, graphs.
Yeah.
In the context, it makes great sense. Yes. Out of the context...
But men will want to know minutely what to do. Men are very practical.
Completely.
Yeah.
Good thing they are very practical, because there is a need. To learn how to do it, you need to be very practical.
Is stress getting in the way of a lot of amorous continence?
Completely. Performance anxiety. For women, what happens is there is a lot of frustrations, and then there is a lot of she feels she needs to be in a certain way, she's expected, and then she never feels like that, and that creates a great stress. And stress, even in our system, in our nerve system, flips to the sympathetic nerve system, which is just not working with eroticism. And in the case of men, the performance anxiety is very strong. It's just being heightened by the whole porn industry, and the lack of education about eroticism makes it so that men go to sexual education, they just see porn, they feel like they have to be like this, and that creates a massive stress. Again, sympathetic system, flight or flight mode. And the eroticism is based on relax and enjoy. So when you learn how to relax and enjoy, when you are reducing the level of stress, not just about the bedroom, but generally in life, then you can engage with it. If not, first you need to reduce the stress. You cannot go to lovemaking stressed. It will echo there, and then it will manifest in a deepening of that stress. For example, men will have, when they have rectal dysfunction, then they feel worse about themselves, then they become, next time they are afraid of even approaching it, and it just escalates to a massive problem.
Circle.
Completely. Something that started with, hey, let's start with a little massage. Or sometimes, let's talk a little bit, because actually a heartfelt conversation distresses us. Men don't know it often. That they need it as much as women do before they get there to talk a little bit, to relax, and then, they can easily then continue.
That's very good advice. So to start off very gently with simply connecting your hearts.
If they're stressed, if they are already super much in love and they just come in and just look in each other's eyes, and depending where they are, but they need to be very attentive to their rhythm. There's the idea that we all have one rhythm and it's always the same, which is so false. Men as well have different rhythms. Sometimes it's one rhythm, sometimes another. They need to be attentive to what fits them in that moment and the woman, and then they need to create a rhythm together. Because it's a dance. Imagine somebody dancing the twist and the other one dancing the slow. It will look pretty awkward, and in the bedroom sometimes it looks like this. Someone is going really quick and the other one is, and it's like, what are you doing? So there is a dissonance, and they need to be very attentive. That's why I said 3 times the idea of empathy, because you need to align the rhythms and to tune into them. And it's a gradual process. You even see it in nature, in the process of mating, they kind of have a little bit of a dance. Why would they need to dance before? Well, basically, an interpretation, they match rhythms. They match a rhythm, and then you can tune in and connect, because it is that moment, you need to be in the same rhythm, aligning with the same heartbeat of the two lovers.
So one of the things you teach is to come out of the mind and the expectations and the misinformation or the lack.
Yeah.
Going back again to the lack of erotic education and into the heart.
Yeah.
So at the moment, say on social media, what is filling the gap where erotic education needs to come in? What is filling that gap?
Pornography there's a huge amount of curiosity in men and women alike. They discovered it in Masters and Johnson in the 60s. The amount of curiosity about eroticism is equal. There was a big shock at the time, but it's equal. Why would it be different? Such a cave-like mentality in that time. Anyhow. And then the pornography, with all its nuances and colors, is then filling in the gap, or I can say answering the curiosity of the people. Now, it doesn't really answer any question. It doesn't actually fulfill the need for knowledge, for discovering how to. So it's like an empty education, which then leads us in a limbo. We think we know a little bit because we saw how it's done on television, but actually when you come to do it, you have no clue about yourself and how to do it. So it has a massive gap which exists there nowadays.
So it's kind of an illusory realm that you may enter and then try to replicate it in real life.
Yeah, we're very susceptible. So you see something, say, I want to do it, and then you go and you do it and you don't feel like that porn star. And you try to do things which are not you. I like very much how Oscar Wilde put it, be yourself, everyone else is taken. It's very true as well to the bedroom.
Yes.
It's very true to the bedroom, and there is with this is an inherent fear. There's an inherent fear there of people just are afraid to know themselves, are afraid to admit they don't know, so they can start the journey of knowing. It's very difficult for men to say, I don't know, I need to be educated. Because, oh my God, how would you not know it? Because I don't. And men don't admit it. It takes, I'm coaching many men, and it's going to start like this. So it's like, it's just a little bit something. I just need a bit of, I know how to do it, but I just need a little advice. And then you start talking, and you realize, what actually they wanted to say is, look, I'm clueless. Which is okay. You're clueless because Nobody told you anything.
And they were afraid to say that.
Afraid to say it. Plato put it, I think it was Plato, said, it is understandable that a child is afraid of the dark, but the real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. And that's the lack of erotic education has somewhere there the fundamental fear of the discovery of what we have inside, which I know you say, oh, but why would I be afraid of that? Because when you realize that, you realize how much work you need to do. You get your butt out of the sofa and you start to do yoga. That's how it feels like. Because when you realize, I am responsible for that, I am responsible for the relationship, I am responsible for my life, suddenly it comes like, oh my God, I need to get to work. And men are afraid of that. So yeah, they stay and unfortunately they masturbate. 20 million men, I think was in the US, who had a form of addiction to pornography. It's ridiculous numbers. It's so saddening. So much potential, and what they do with it, they masturbate.
So education is very much needed, and we see a lot of influencers becoming popular, educating men in their sexuality, but also in their masculinity. Can you say more about that?
I mean, the influencers, like Tate is probably one of the biggest nowadays. They hit a point which is so true. There is a lack of gender education. Men have no clue how to become men. There is no more role models. The stereotypes are broken. There's no archetypes put there. So there is a gap. And in this gap, it says, I have one solution. I disagree with quite a bit. I agree with some. I mean, it's a combination. I mean, I believe there is a lack of the spiritual orientation, but on some levels, it's true. Quite rudimentary, the parts which are true, but there's some parts which are true. And it caught like fire because it was a realization how much is needed. For me, the most interesting part about that aspect of life is how much they were afraid of someone like him, an influencer, which all he did was putting YouTube clips up. It's not like arranging a revolution in the street, but the fear, because it was a recognition of the fact that the king is naked, that there is no education for men, and then it's enough one man who says, try this, and everybody go. If we had a variety of educations, which men can start to choose themselves, making, we can say, a mix and match. Oh, this is a very good part there, this is a very good part there, will be much more meaningful. But now the actual voices they come as voices which are, they characterize themselves by opposing the social norms. So they are already characterize themselves by a negation of, not an affirmation of a path that they walked. So it's already an issue there. But if comes, beneficial masculine voices that naturally rise, and then teenager, men at 20 have a variety of choices and they start to choose, I think that will be a much more harmonious education. And then even those voices, they come in a context. There's a variety of meaningful voices and they come in a context. Now it's a bit lacking context. And
it seems to be very much a reaction to women becoming more powerful, and it does tinge on misogyny and...
Yeah, but I think the problem is women aren't becoming more powerful. We all become weaker. The difference is less, but we all became weaker.
In what way?
In the way of our power of choice, ability of self-control, the level of opinions that are assimilated through knowledge. We all became weaker in that, men and women alike. And the problem with men nowadays as well makes women unhappy, because most of the women like men. And if many men are confused, who will they be with? And I meet so many women who are like, there's no men around, there's no men around. It's like a few millions around, what do you mean? There's no men around because they're confused, they're unhappy, they're constantly depressed, they don't know what to do with their life, they are afraid of me. A woman is saying, it's like, yeah, that's an issue. So I don't believe women became more powerful. I believe we all became weaker.
Through
the lack of archetypes, the rising of confusion, the lack of a certain form of awakening, like the inner, the inner voice has become weaker and weaker. And through that, what we have is weaker people.
When you say archetypes, do you mean role models or people?
I mean, role models that represents archetypal form. I mean, Jung described it very well when he said this, he made this, both Jung and, I have a lapsus of his name, the hero's journey guy, what's his name?
Oh,
Joseph Campbell.
Joseph Campbell, yes.
Jung and then later on Campbell, when they define very beautifully, they says, look, there's universal archetypes, you can find them in all traditions, they represent a form of archetypal masculinity and femininity, which is not culturally dependent, but is explained in the culture. It is an aspect which is universal, that is beyond time, because always there will be fundamental archetypes, and then it could be that some people have awakened that aspect within them, and then they become beneficial role models, because they tune in, they resonate, they align themselves with universal archetypal form, they become extremely meaningful. Then they are the role models. But what happened in the 50s and 60s, there was the break of the stereotypes, which is very beneficial. But when the stereotype broke and there is a gap, because nobody aligned with archetypes, with role models, in that gap, confusion was born, because in that time, I mean, at least you knew something. You would go through the stereotype.
Yes.
But when the stereotype is born and you're not yet aligned with an archetype, what do you follow? There's nothing. There's no way for one man or woman to mold themselves in according to a pattern, and then appears an immense amount of confusion. So I think nowadays we are exactly in this situation. And you see it in these developed countries like Japan. The amount of men who are still not just single, they are virgins at the age of 35 is 30% of the population. So one of every third Japanese is a virgin when he's 35.
And this is coming from confusion.
Fear, confusion, lack of knowledge how to do it. And it's not that they lack libido. It's not that they lack even a wish. It's so suppressed. It's so neglected. They don't know what to follow. There's a massive amount of confusion. That's just one country. I mean, it became quite acute also in China. Is a problem. Also in the West, it becomes, we make love less and less. You say, oh, but we should have more time because now we are more developed. We make love less and less. The amount of fulfillment is in decrease. If you would look at that as criteria of humanity, the humanity is in a slope, not in a rise. So,
I'll bring it round to your vision for erotic education. Can you paint me a picture of what that would look like?
It will be put on in stages. There is the part that one needs to learn when they're a teenager. For example, the understanding of the beauty, celebrating the beauty of your gender. I mean, I do it now with workshop with men in the beginning. Men need to tell me why it's so great to be a man. Not in a comparison to a woman. Just because it's great to be a man. Because it's great to be a man and it's great to be a woman. Celebrate that. Not as a comparison, as a celebration of your own gender, first and foremost. With this, the knowledge of archetypes and the realization that the desires that one is having aren't a hinder, aren't a sin, aren't something that we need to suppress, but an aspect of our life that we need to understand and deepen. That's the first part. The second part, as they grow older and they mature in age, is the part in which we learn about amorous continence, about ways of engaging erotically, about the value of separating the orgasm and ejaculation and so forth. And then you deepen this practice with understanding of the spiritual role of eroticism in one's own life. So I'll have to, in big scheme, to put it in 3 phases, I will put it in that way.
Well, Foca, I wish you so much luck with your erotic education. It sounds really wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you for watching. At Tara, our mission is to make genuine spiritual knowledge available for all those who aspire for spiritual development and transformation. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.